We've done full-scale shoots with Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Doja Cat. It's been really just a sort of a landmark year.
What's happening, everybody? It's episode 237 of the Cassius Morris Show. Thanks for tuning into this brand new edition of the podcast. I gotta tell you guys, man, I'm gonna have to bitch a little bit right off the top of the episode. I am so goddamn cold, man, and I am sick of it, dude. Is it just me? I don't know if anybody else out there lives in a super cold city. The temperatures I'm getting out here has been minus 30, minus 35, and minus 20 has been considered a nice day. This shit is insane. It almost has me looking around like, do we live here because we don't know where there's an airport? Do we live, like, why exactly we live here? I'm really not quite sure. But I gotta tell you guys, man, it's been affecting me. I've really been feeling the effects of it, you know. With the type of work that I do, I'm naturally at this desk a lot. You know, I'm at this desk a lot. I'm inside a lot. And I really didn't realize how much easier this was to do when it was nice out. Through the summer, I felt like I was living such a good quality of life compared to how it is now. And it's so strange how that vitamin D it really just does a huge change on your mood and sometimes, for some people, even your outlook on life. It's so strange. And I've been feeling it sort of being compounded. Throughout the summer, you know, I wasn't eating the healthiest diet in the world. Like, admittedly, this past year, I haven't been the healthiest guy in the world. I eat okay. Like, I'm not eating buckets of KFC, but I was eating a lot of frozen fish and chips, a lot of frozen pizzas, a lot of frozen shit, to be honest. And when I first did this was pretty much happening due to this period that I went through when I first got this new apartment. And it was like a period of financial anxiety. It's like I was spending so much below my means just to sort of have like this feeling of, yes, good, I'm saving money and this is a good thing to do. And I had to look in the mirror one day and realize, like, I'm doing this at the cost of my health. And I don't need to be eating such crap when, again, if I don't need to, why am I, you know? That was one of the major things that I realized coming into this cold season, man. It just felt like it really amplified all of these choices that I was making in terms of quick, easy, cheap food. I mean, there was times where I would order a pizza and eat that just throughout the day as my, like, lunch, dinner, and late night food. Like that, just the pizza, I would make a medium pizza last. And thinking about that, man, I was doing that a couple times a week for sure. And in between, it was mostly frozen food. My point in saying all of this is that it's compounded by the weather. And speaking of looking in the mirror, that's one of the fascinating things about this job, man. You're forced to look in the mirror. You know, there's a lot of people who don't look in the mirror, or when they do, they don't really examine themselves, and they ignore things about themselves that may be happening, and they just sort of let it compound and happen. The thing with this is that I have no choice but to look at myself. And I'm checking in, you know, with how I look, how I sound, how I generally am, is being displayed to me on a monitor 2 to 3 days a week. And I'm keeping tabs of this. So I get a live update, sort of, I guess, close to how other people see me. But the point is, it's more of an objective view of myself than if I wasn't watching myself on here all the time, editing and such. And it doesn't let you get away with shit, man. It's crazy. Like, I started to notice in the edits how low my mood has been, how unhappy I've seemed. And I think people have noticed it. I think some people have noticed it. And, you know, if you're comparing how I've sort of am coming across in this moment to a podcast of 2 months ago, you're going to see a difference. Hopefully you didn't notice it at the time. But it's one of those things that if you go back now, you'll see a difference. And I really just realized, like, this is a blessing because it makes it so much easier to go ahead and make a change. And that's what I've decided to do. And it's weird because it wasn't a new year, new me thing. That's so overplayed and played out. It was just a coincidence that it happened to be nearing the start of a new year. And I genuinely wanted to get healthy. So, you know, I'm trying to get healthy, man. I'm putting greens and fruits in my diet, finally. You know, when I was living with my parents, man, I was healthy as fuck because I never realized growing up how great of a diet we had. We'd be eating broccoli, carrots, corn, peas with every meal. We'd have vegetables with every meal. We'd have constantly just healthy juices and just fruits and just yogurt, just all this stuff that you take for granted. And I really, really started feeling the difference here. So I'm making a change. I got a blender for Christmas. Shout out to my parents. Still hooking it up with the great gifts. I'm getting those pre-made pucks, they call them, full of nutrients, greens, and different vegetables and fruits. I got different bags of fruits. And I am spending a little more on it. Like, I'm going ahead and I'm getting the good organic fruit and I'm getting the good stuff because you know what, man? Your health is worth it. It's just one of those things. I think that there's this strange mentality, and I think a lot of it comes from hustle sort of culture, this modern day hustle culture that we have, that you need to be abusing yourself in order to be making progress. And I gotta say, as somebody who has been sort of in that world, that's probably the biggest myth I've ever heard about the whole quote unquote hustle culture. I think the better you take care of yourself, the more hours you sleep, the healthier you eat, the better your productivity is going to be. So this whole staying up all night and slaving away and falling asleep during meetings because you were trying to cram extra work in the night before, this is sort of the lifestyle I was living this past year. And I'm here to tell you guys from the firsthand perspective, it does not work. It doesn't work. It's not healthy, it's not practical, and it's not productive. So, yeah, that's a lot of, I don't even know what to say at this point. It's just, I've really decided to take a look in the mirror and be like, you don't need to be abusing yourself and be almost some sort of martyr in order to feel like you're advancing and making progress. It's not how business works, and I don't think that's really how the world works. And the culture is very sick. When you look at the culture of what's being promoted on Instagram and Facebook in general, all these different subcultures, hustle culture, celebrity culture, the sort of Instagram booty girls, which, hey, I don't mind much of this stuff. Some of this stuff I follow. But the culture is just so warped. And the whole perception of what you need to do to be in a certain place, I think, is completely warped. I mean, even with these Instagram girls, I see these girls posting all these workouts about how to build your glutes and how to get the biggest bubble butt and how to have the perfect ass. And they do it in the name of health and motivation. And I sat back one day and I guess I understand the motivation part, but I was sitting there looking at some of this and I was like, what does having a massive ass have to do with your health? Like, practically speaking, you can be incredibly healthy, an incredibly healthy person. You don't have to have massive glutes as a female to be healthy. It's such a strange thing. But for some reason, we have this perception now that to be an in-shape, healthy female who's desirable, you need to have a massive ass. Very bizarre. I don't know what the fuck we're headed to, what our goal is with all this shit. I don't know. I really don't know, but we're not going to find that answer today. But in terms of next steps, the next steps is to become a better me so I can put out a better product, man. Especially with the concussion, it just slowed me down so much. And as I do more and more research, I find that the healthiest thing you can do for a concussion, eat lots of vitamins, antioxidants, all this type of stuff. So I'm not going to turn into a nutritionist freak, one of these douchebags who's constantly trying to make people feel bad and talk about how much better everybody could be. I'm just talking about myself, and hopefully we can make a positive change. Part of that change, too, is going to be reaching out to a lot more people and having some more eclectic guests on the show. That's one of the things I want to do really for this year, 2022. I want to talk to a lot more different people. And I started reaching out to some people in the summer, man, and this actually cracked me up. I reached out to popular comedian Tim Dillon, who, if you don't know, I highly recommend. He's a phenomenal podcast host, a hilarious comic, I think one of the most skilled comics we have in modern day. And I reached out to Tim to ask him to do the podcast, and I got to be honest with you guys, man. I pretty much knew he wasn't going to do it. And almost in a strange, convoluted way, I was hoping he wasn't going to do it. And I know that may be hard to believe, but Tim Dillon's whole character is like, basically, fuck you, I don't care, I do what I want. And if he would have reached back to me with like, yeah, man, I got you, what day do you want to do the Zoom? I almost would have been a tad bit disappointed, which is probably, I'm sure it sounds very bizarre, but I actually pulled up the message that I send to Tim Dillon here, that I sent to him back in August to ask him to be on the podcast. And the way I tried to approach him was in a way that I thought would resonate with a comedian. You know, I didn't want to hit him up and be like, hey man, you should really do this. This is not a charity, okay? People either want to do something or they don't. They're not interested necessarily in helping you, just another dude with a podcast. So here's the message I sent him. I said, hi Tim, I'm about to be a super annoying dick and ask if you might drop by my podcast. I'm part of the 5% you mentioned on Sickler who will either be household names in the future or dead in the street. And if I can manage to secure an interview with you, I might make it past the dead in the street part. Let me know. And as you can see here, this was seen by Tim Dillon on August 18th, and there was no response. Now, if you're wondering what I mean by that Sickler comment, Tim was on Ryan Sickler and he was laughing about that. He was saying that Ryan has a lot of dudes on who are still up and coming. And he said he loved to watch these guys like sort of coming up in the ranks because they'll either be a household name or they'll be dead in the street. And obviously it's a joke. He's a fucking comic. But this is something I've joked about with my friends too. It's like, I'm either going to be quote unquote the next, whoever to take the sort of throne, so to speak, for broadcasting or not, and I think it's sort of a very high stakes game to be playing. And I thought it was interesting that he pointed that out. But that tactic did not work for me. So Tim Dillon, if you're watching this, I love you. I would love to have you on the show. And I'm still a huge fan, man. I actually like you more since you said no to me. Today's guest on the podcast, this is a cool one for all the up and coming artists out there who are watching this for tips on how to make it to the next level. Not necessarily how, because that sort of needs to be found by each individual. But what it takes to get to the next level and what people at major music and media companies look for in terms of picking somebody up to help them reach that level. We were joined today by David McTiernan, the head of artist relations at Vevo. Vevo, of course, where all the music videos pretty much on YouTube come from. Billions of followers, billions of views. I don't know about billions of followers, but billions of views all across the internet. Any artist you can think of, they're partnered with, and they've been doing massive, massive things in terms of artist spotlights, discovery platforms for different up-and-coming people, so much. And, Vevo is just an awesome company, man. And as we discussed in this podcast, it's hard to find that, there's a music company where there's younger people with their ear to the streets that actually care about music. Usually when you think about a music business or like a record label type thing, you think of a stiff dude in a suit who doesn't know shit about music, but somehow has the keys to the castle. And that's the thing I like about Vevo and why I did this podcast, is that it's not like that. And they actually have their ear to the street, like I said, and they are interested in the music. If you enjoy what you're about to see on this podcast, please click that subscribe button on YouTube. Also, make sure to click that notification bell to get real-time updates about everything I've been doing. You can follow me on all social media at Cassius Morris and the show at Cassius Show. We're trying to get those numbers up. Let's smash those subscribers, man. I've been under 2,000 subscribers? That's bullshit. We need more, dude. Let's get this to like 10K by the end of 2022. Let's stop fucking around, man. We're coming here to take over. And this is a new dawn, motherfuckers. This is the new show right here. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy my chat with David McTiernan. And we'll catch you guys right afterwards. Really appreciate you taking the time today. I know it's must never be a dull moment over at Vevo lately.
Yeah, we keep it busy for sure. But thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here for sure.
100%. So, maybe talk to me about what's been going on as of late. The senior director of artists and label relations over at Vevo. Maybe sort of take us through a day in the life right now to start.
Yeah. Well, we just are in the midst of our annual Artist to Watch campaign. So that is one of the biggest projects that we do every year. Takes really about 3-4 months to put together. And that is, we're highlighting basically the artists that we think are most poised to have a breakout year the following year. So we start the process in July. We take submissions from all over the world, labels, managers, independent artists, distributors. We usually get about 500 submissions. And we picked 21 artists this year. And so we're in the throes of getting all of that content out, performances from all of these artists. We've got an incredible class this year, really great international representation: the U.S., UK, Australia, Korea, Colombia, France, Italy,
Wow.
Germany. So really, really great. That's definitely been it takes a village for sure, across our entire team. So we're really working on getting that out and supporting all of these artists. And that's sort of our big push between now and the end of the year, making sure all that content launches and that we get it, a real good editorial push behind all of it as well.
Man, that's super exciting. So, I mean, in terms of a project like that, are you, in terms of your role, really dealing with artists one-on-one, or is your role more so sort of facilitating who will deal with these artists more closely?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. So in my role, heading up artists and label relations, I'm really in charge of the team that interfaces with everyone in the artistic community. So in a lot of cases, that is artists. We deal really closely with labels. So whether it's a major or an indie, whoever the artist is signed to, if they're signed, and management as well. So especially in the context of original content, we work really super closely with management. So I have a pretty sizable team, and we've basically divided up most of the partners that we work with. So everyone's got a day-to-day contact. So in a lot of cases, that's me. But there are, as I said, a bunch of folks on my team who each have their own day-to-day accounts and artists and labels and managers that they work with.
In terms of the label comparison, I'm curious, how does it work exactly between Vevo and the labels? And is there any difference, for example, say with Vevo dealing with an independent artist compared to an artist that's on a label? Are there big differences there?
Yeah, so this is it's a great question. I'll explain a little bit about sort of Vevo history, and kind of I think that kind of underscores how we work with labels. So we're a joint venture between Universal Music Group and Sony. Basically, about 12 years ago, it's end of 2009. Actually, I think next week is maybe our 12th birthday. It was sort of the early days of YouTube, and labels were trying to figure out basically how to combat piracy and make sure that videos are monetized properly. And so UMG and Sony came together and founded Vevo to make sure that, again, the videos were really monetized, and that they were kind of controlling the official video footprint on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So out of the gates, you've got all of the sort of biggest artists in the world through those two majors delivering all their content to Vevo. Over the last 12 years since, we've basically executed deals with every other label that you can imagine, large and small, as well as a bunch of independent distributors. So whether you're, again, signed to a major label, an independent label, or if you're a completely independent artist, there is basically no reason why you couldn't deliver your content through us. When we just basically need the content to come through one of those lanes. We don't have the ability for an artist to kind of click upload themselves as they might be used to doing if they're uploading directly to YouTube. But again, there's a number of sort of independent distributors that we work with that help us onboard independent artists. And my team, we're all super passionate music fans, and we spend a lot of time doing, a lot of times cold outreach to artists that we find, whether it's on, could be YouTube or Spotify or going out to shows. We're all at shows, a little bit less the last couple of years, but historically, we're all out at venues all the time, and so we do a lot of outreach to artists, signed and unsigned, to get them onboarded to Vevo through one of those outlets.
It's interesting because, you hear about, these bigger companies, whether it's labels or similar management companies, that, the perception seems to be that it's a bunch of older people in suits who maybe are disconnected from the business. But the vibe I get from Vevo is that it's not the case. It seems to be a lot of people who are really out on the ground. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the reason that I think it's so important for my team to have really direct relationships with the artist community. I think on one hand, because we came out of the major labels, there's a perception kind of going back to that maybe Vevo is just for major label artists, or it's maybe just for pop artists, or it's that this kind of big corporate entity. When again, as I was saying, it's we work with artists of all levels, of all genres, from all over the world. And it's especially my team that the music and talent department, we're all passionate, hungry music fans and just avid consumers of music that, again, we're all at shows. We're building playlists. We're on the front lines and really always trying to find what's next. We do so much work with emerging artists, that even though some of the kind of big household names might keep the lights on, we're always trying to find who those next household names are. And we've got a bunch of programs and original content opportunities that really help to foster those artists' growth through Vevo.
So when you're looking for these independent artists, like artists that you're looking to maybe give a platform for the first time, what are some of the sort of trademark qualities of these artists that really make you guys, as a big company who's already working with major people, want to actually reach out with a cold email per se?
Yeah, I think, there's a number of things that probably you could ask anyone on my team, and they might kind of give you a slightly different answer depending on kind of where they're discovering music and what they're most passionate about.
And the artist, I'd imagine, also.
Say it again.
I would imagine it depends on the artist also.
Absolutely. And so I think sort of one of the word that I always kind of come back to is momentum. And I think that, it's the sort of initial outreach is because maybe we find a song that we really love or a video that we really love. And, for me, I'm always looking for an artist that maybe I can't even compare to somebody else that has a really sort of unique sound. But momentum, I think, is so important for where we get involved. And whether it's through our program, Discover, where we shoot these live performances with brand new artists in our Brooklyn studio or our studio in London, or our Lift program, which is sort of when artists are about to really break into the mainstream and become a household name. It's really about seeing artists that are not just great, but that have this kind of momentum, right? That they're growing week over week or month over month, and that there's this kind of undeniable buzz. And I think it's one of those things where it's the third or fourth or fifth time you kind of hear an artist's name in a short period of time. You're like, okay, wait, I've heard this artist name now a few times. There's definitely some momentum here from hearing about it from kind of different sources. I'm seeing them on a bill with other artists that I really like, and I'm seeing them on these other playlists, and they're popping up on my YouTube home screen and all these different things. So, it's a combination of all that stuff. I've always maintained that that it is really important, though, for my team to create relationships with artists, really from day one. And, booking an artist maybe for one of those programs, momentum is really important, but I do spend a lot of time reaching out to and onboarding artists where I just think the music is really great and special, but they might not be doing a million streams or even touring yet or selling tickets or anything like that. But it's really important for, I think, our relationship with artists, for them to know that we really just believe in the music and we really want to support them when it's not because there's a clear benefit necessarily for Vevo. We have a platform that we can support new talent. And I want to do that every opportunity I can. And if down the line, these artists then start to really become household names and are selling out tours and doing those millions of streams, then that's great. And hopefully we've got a really close relationship with them. We can continue to collaborate and do some cool stuff. But it's not mandatory for them to have that sort of traction to work with Vevo.
Okay. And you bring up an interesting point, though, because definitely more in it for the artists than there is for you guys as a company. Given the fact that you have pretty much the entire major market cornered, you don't really have to be doing this. So it really does come from a place of passion. Yeah,
I think with the emerging talent, absolutely. again, because we do work so closely with the label system, obviously we do a ton of work with the big established mainstream names as well. We've had an incredible year on the original content front. Just in the last 12 months alone, we've done full-scale shoots with Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Doja Cat, J Balvin. It's been really just a sort of a landmark year, and I think being able to provide value for artists, no matter where they are in that trajectory. So, whether they're, again, brand new and it's their first song and their first single, there's something that we can provide and give them. Or if you're a superstar, arena act, we can still provide really meaningful value, whether that's editorially in promoting your content, on YouTube or on our TV apps or anywhere else, or partnering with you to collaborate and create really beautiful, best-in-class original content. We can do that at any level.
No, 100%. I wonder, what's the feeling like when you guys have somebody maybe in this situation who is probably going to become a really huge artist, and the feeling is it almost sort of an undeniable feeling, or is there still some sort of question, say with like a Billie Eilish, for example, of is this really going to work?
Yeah, I mean, it's so different artist to artist.
Yeah.
I think that there are those sort of slam dunk, everybody in the room knows it when an artist is played. And, Billie is definitely an example of that. Somebody that we started working with, I think maybe back in 2017, or this year. I think obviously the biggest success stories in music is Olivia Rodrigo. Mm-hmm. And I still remember the first time I heard Driver's License before it had been released, and immediately had that feeling of, okay, this is going to be something really big. Immediately brought it to my team and played it in a meeting. And every head in the room turned, and we all kind of had that feeling. And so that definitely happens, and those sort of undeniable moments. But yeah, music is such a subjective thing, and mm-hmm. It's how you define kind of what success looks like for different artists and different genres. And that's one of the things that makes this artist to watch process so fun and collaborative, is because we sit in a room and we really debate, even if it's a Zoom room, but debate all these different artists, and everyone's got their sort of passion projects of, okay, I think these 3 or 4 artists are absolutely gonna break out and be smash successes next year. And really advocating for the artists that you believe in, when maybe it's not always so apparent or obvious to everybody in the room. And it's a fun opportunity for everyone to kind of make their case.
That is fascinating. You mentioned the core operations being in New York, London. I'm sure there's sort of different facets across the world potentially.
Yep. Absolutely.
Is it helping people at this point, let's say for a relationship with a company like Vevo, to be in New York, to be in London, or with the new world we're living in now with Zoom and all this, is that not really a factor anymore?
Yeah. So a couple of things. We do have offices, primarily New York and London, as far as my team, the artist facing team, is. But yeah, we've got offices in Portland and Chicago and down in Australia as well. So depending sort of on job function, we've got folks scattered across the globe. But yeah, you bring up an interesting point. I think while people not traveling as much has been super limiting in some ways, I think it's also provided access to artists and parts of the world that we otherwise might not have been able to work with. One thing that we did sort of in the early days of the pandemic last year, we sort of a lot of folks were doing kind of live streams, and that was a big thing. And we were in that game as well. And then we kind of put a pause on it, and we said, okay, how can we still create something that's kind of elevated and up to the quality of the content that we're used to producing. And we actually did a lot of remote shooting with artists that were, we called it Discover at Home. And we also did our series Control at Home. and we were shooting with artists on the English countryside, and an artist in Korea. We did an artist in New Zealand, and these were artists that, you know, maybe at some point would have made it to New York or London, but being able to do things remotely was sort of an interesting experiment for us to be able to do this kind of global production.
Yeah.
We did that for a few months while we basically got our studios up to code. But we've been fully operational now in the studio in both in Brooklyn and in London for really over a year. I think we started full production again in the fall of last year. So
Nice.
It's important for artists to kind of make it to one of those cities if we're going to do some original content production at this point for one of those series. But my team takes meetings with artists all over the world remotely. I think that part has remained really, really easy to do. Obviously, we're all used to being on video conference all the time, and
easier by the day.
Absolutely. And I think, for artists that might have come to New York for, a promo week, and they're being whisked around from office to office to meet with every partner. I have to imagine those artists are, enjoying the ease of being able to kind of be at home and kind of just hop on, maybe 5 or 6 Zooms instead of going to all points of New York City in the span of a few hours.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's easy for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thinking about Vevo's involvement with the actual music videos, obviously you guys are super hands-on with, the discovery aspects in those campaigns. How about the major artists? Is it very frequent that an artist like Drake or maybe, somebody at that level will get in touch with you guys for elements in your video, or is that something they're handling and bringing to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of the actual creation of the official videos that are coming from the artists, generally speaking, we're not necessarily involved in the creative aspect of that. Generally, it's happening entirely on the label and management side, and then we're really responsible for distributing that video and getting it out into the world and supporting it on everywhere people are looking for it, whether it's on their phone or computer or on their TV in the living room. We definitely work pretty proactively with artists of that level in selling advertising around that content. So when we get a heads up on a video that's going to be coming, maybe in a week or 2 weeks, or sometimes, a month, we're able to then work with our sales team to offer that as a premium offering to advertisers to really kind of own all of the media around a big video premiere. And that's a really big way that we're able to help artists, recoup some of the money that they're spending on these videos. If we can go out and sell a really big advertising package around it, and the revenue that's flowing back to the label and by extension the artist is significantly higher than it would be for just kind of run of site ads. That's a big way that we're able to proactively help artists of that sort of Drake level, like you said, really get the most out of working with Vevo.
Interesting. So, what's the sort of typical, and maybe you can't say specific exact numbers, but the typical breakdown in terms of what's being taken home from the company and what's being taken home from the artist?
Yeah, so it's really not something I can speak to in terms of specifics, especially as it relates to the artist piece of that. We are, we're paying out to our label and distributor partners, based on the streams that they generate with us. But as far as what the artists then make, it's going to be so specific to each artist deal with their label or distributor.
Yes, this is true. So in terms of the changing face of streaming in general, because it's evolving so much with over the top television, different apps, sort of where does Vevo stand with this? And could we potentially be seeing any sort of new content delivery methods from Vevo on any of these platforms?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's been a really transformative couple of years for us, particularly as it relates to the connected TV space. So, historically, going back to, let's say, 2018, 2019, I guess if you go back even further, we would do the vast majority of our traffic on desktop, and whether that's basically desktop computers we're doing we're our number one traffic source. Advent of mobile and people consuming videos there, mobile was really our number one traffic source the last few years, particularly as then mobile is being adopted in countries outside the US, particularly in Latin America, where we do a ton of consumption on mobile. But connected TV has really just absolutely exploded for us in the last couple of years, where desktops declined and mobile's kind of just maintained. Connected TV has just absolutely exploded. Both in terms of our traffic and in terms of our revenue. We're fully, I think at the beginning of 2020, it was about 4% of our revenue was coming from TV. By the end of this year, so just in another few weeks, we're projecting to be about half of our revenue is coming from TV
in 1 year.
And in really, I guess that's about 2 years, because it's in all of 2020 and 2021. That's been a shift of our focus to really kind of foster the growth that we were seeing there. Obviously, adoption of connected TVs has really exploded in that time. But it's really been a dedicated effort from our team on the sales side to be selling packages that are really catered to the living room environment, as well as our business development team and business affairs team, executing deals with all these different platforms, so that anywhere people are looking for Vevo, whether it's Apple TV or Samsung or Roku, that we're there. And we've got a presence there. And so, we've launched on, a couple dozen platforms all around the world in the TV environment. And, a couple really exciting things about that space. Again, not just that it's growing so fast, but you see much longer session times. You think about if you or I were watching a video, maybe on our phone, we might watch one video or two videos, and that might be it. People are pretty used to putting on the Vevo app on their TV and kind of leaving it on. We see average session times probably closer to about 30 minutes there. Some people are leaving it on maybe for an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours,
which is huge compared to 3 minutes,
something like that. Absolutely. And you have a lot of co-viewing. And that's something that allows us to really charge, advertisers a bit more, is because in a lot of cases, the majority of cases, really, you've got multiple people in the room that are consuming that content on the TV, as opposed to a mobile phone, which, generally speaking, is a pretty individual experience. So some pretty exciting changes there. And we're expecting to fully keep growing in the TV space, both from a app footprint standpoint and the places you can find us, as well as the revenue. And obviously we're doing a ton of programming there editorially. We've got linear channels, we've got VOD channels, so people can go in and search what they're looking for. But again, the linear channels have been great as well. Us programming genre blocks and birthdays for different artists and all those different things. So definitely an exciting and transformative couple of years in that space.
Definitely, sky's the limit there. I mean, what have some of the other biggest changes been in terms of what you've noticed from your beginning of your career at Vevo until now, in terms of the company evolving in the space?
Yeah. Wow. That's a big question. I think
it's been almost 12 years, right? 12 or 11 years.
Yeah. So Vevo started in, very end of 2009. I've been with Vevo since 2013. So a little over 8 years for me.
Wow.
I think, the sort of, I would say the shift in the genres that are most popular has been one really significant change. And, I'm sort of a big believer that genre is sort of an outdated concept, and we should kind of be moving away from it. And I think so much of, how certain artists are classified by genre is, based on what your perception of what they've made in the past and, what label they're signed to, or there's all these other different factors that, it's really hard to think about genre in a vacuum. But
I agree.
The absolute explosion of Latin music in the last couple of years, and you have artists that primarily were only appealing to maybe a Spanish speaking audience a few years ago, are now getting that mainstream, Hot 100, top 40 radio airplay look, and collaborating with your quote unquote mainstream pop artists. And I think that that's had a lot to do with the real explosion that we've seen there. So I think that that's one big thing, and obviously what I was saying earlier about how global and representative our artist to watch list is of not just what's happening in the U.S. and the U.K. where our sort of teams are based, but making sure that we're incorporating artists from all over the world, from Latin America. We have our first K-pop artist in artist to watch this year. So there's all these different movements of music that I think historically might have been written off as international or global or sort of limited in terms of what their audience is, and now those artists are being consumed right along with the mainstream quote unquote pop and top 40 artists that we were familiar with already.
Is the K-pop revolution here to stay? I mean, I don't think we've ever really seen something blowing up so big coming from another part of the world. Is this a fad, or is this something that's here?
Yeah, it really feels like it's here to stay for sure. And I think the fandom has such a huge I think it's in large part due to their passionate fan base. Really, you look at how fans of a lot of these K-pop artists are interacting and sharing and engaging on social. That is such a huge impact on how that music spreads across the globe. And, and I think it really influences the algorithms on all these networks as well, that when these fans are engaging with every video and every post, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or anywhere else, that's sending all these really super positive signals to the algorithms on all of these different networks that this content is really worthwhile, and it's helping, I think, expose it to audiences that otherwise might not have seen it.
Couldn't agree more. David, I really appreciate your time today, and we'll send this along to the team before we move ahead with anything. But again, thank you so much for sharing some insight with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed it. And thanks so much for the time.
Huge shout out to David McTiernan and the good folks over at Vevo for arranging this podcast. Really cool to chat with him and sort of just get a look at, again, what it takes to sort of start climbing that ladder, man. The music business is so complex. And it's one of those things that I don't think people really realize how complex it is. But there's so many variables and there's so many different things that you can do and can't do and shouldn't do. It's just a really, really complex thing. And if I could give any advice, just as a guy who's been observing it and sort of I'm in the business, I'm not an artist, but I definitely have knowledge of the business, is that you need to take, yes, listen to tips from people like this and take what applies to you from this. But that's the key word. Take what applies to you. There's no formula for success, or else everybody would follow the same one. Formula for success varies on who you are, where you are, and what you do. And you can change those things. I don't know if you can change who you are, but you can change where you are and what you're doing based on, what formula will work for you. And I highly recommend that. But never get caught up in the idea that there's a certain way to do it. There are certain elements of it, but those elements vary from person to person and artist to artist. The other thing I would really, really say for up-and-coming artists is to completely detach yourself, and I know it's hard to do, from what you think it should be like when you start becoming an artist and when you start climbing that ladder. The one thing I can guarantee to you is this, based on my own personal experience climbing my own ladder. Whatever you think it will be like, it will not be. I can promise you, I will bet you my life savings, how you think this will play out for you is the exact opposite of how it's going to go. You should have that end goal in your mind. But the specifics of that, like if you want a nice home, that's a great goal to have. But to have this specific house in Georgia that Mike Tyson used to have, and I'm going to go here. No. Forget those specifics. All you need to do is focus on where you want to go. The specifics of your happiness, the specifics of your success are irrelevant. Those will come up as they come. It's not a problem until it's a problem. So don't make it a problem. Ignore what you think it should be like. Trust me, guys. I'm still working on this. I've had so many goals that I've reached, thankfully. But the only negative side of that is that whatever I thought it would give me in terms of feeling or whatever, it just doesn't happen. So the best advice I could give you, detach from what you think it should be and start focusing on what it is. And that's when you're going to start finding success. I want to thank you guys for tuning into this brand new episode of the podcast. Going to keep this going. Going to keep talking more on these intros and outros. Keep making it eclectic and just keep bringing you guys the best content I can. I'm feeling better. I'm out of my fucking coma. The past 6 months, I looked awake. I may as well have been in a coma from this whole concussion shit. But I'm back, motherfuckers. Hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide the competition. You get me? Because we're coming for the crown. I appreciate you guys very, very much. Check in with you soon.